right. Good afternoon. All right, yep, just checking to make sure our audio is up. Make sure. Just want to make sure everything's working here. All right. Yes, sir. All right, cool. Just wanted to make sure. I think last show we had a couple audio issues, so I was just double checking everything is working. We are live here, Moneyline MMA, coming to you guys with UFC Saudi Arabia picks. Of course, we had the main event switch up. Robert Whittaker was supposed to fight. Khamzat Chimaev backs out. Rumor is food poisoning. Who knows? He's in the hospital, backing out yet again. Really disappointing. Sad to see, and can't say much more than that. Fighting now, late replacement Ikram Aliskerov, who's a guy that Jose and I, well, at least I picked as a 4-weight last week, and Jose had as his 5-weight. So he really was pretty much the lock of the week for us last week. Given though that he was fighting Antonio Tricoli, a very, very, very different opponent. It's kind of insane the step up. He's going from Tricoli as like a co-main event to Robert Whittaker as a main event, 5-round fight. And you guys are going to get to hear about that one pretty early in the show, it's safe to say. But before we get too deep into UFC Saudi Arabia, let's quickly cover our picks from last week. Anybody who was there will remember that I had a 5-weight pick, on Asu Amabayev. That hits. I thought he was going to, I specifically called, I will admit, I called inside the distance on that one. I called by submission, and it did not happen. There were several times when he got Jose Johnson on his back in a really bad situation, but he just wasn't able to close the fight. And, you know, I got to give props to Jose Johnson because he fought admirably. There were, like I said, multiple times I thought he was going to get submitted, and there were even a time or two where it looked like he might submit Asu Amabayev, but Asu is just really good. Like, I think it was the lankiness of Jose Johnson that fared him the best there. Even though he was such a skinny, like 125-pounder, it didn't matter. And Asu Amabayev was able to out-wrestle him en route to a unanimous decision victory. As I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, Jose's 5-weight did not fight, so that is not a loss. That's just NA on that fight. So technically, the next up for Jose, which would have been his 5-weight, then in that case would have been Nate Maness, who got a great win. That was a guy that both Jose and I had picked. He was Jose's 4-weight, my 3-weight. So that was a great little pick there by both of us. We predicted Nate Maness, and he really just kind of took it to Jimmy Flick. Jimmy Flick did what you'd expect him to do, try and wrestle, try and get takedowns. Nate Maness said no. Simple as that. Other than that, Jose picked Lucas Almeida. That was a good one. And also, Tatsuro Taira got the win. I did pick Alex Perez. That was our 1-weight differentiating disagreement, I should say. I thought Alex Perez was going to fare a little bit better. And I'll give credit to Taira. He won the fight by injury. But I'll give him credit. He was on Alex's back, and it was just like an awkward fall. You hate to see it because it didn't look like Alex was going to get submitted, but it was definitely down the bad path for Alex. He was not winning that fight. And Taira did a great job kind of continuing his streak and showing that he really is a prospect to be concerned about in that division. So that's a pretty quick highlight of our events from last week, UFC Apex 93. But we're actually going to be moving to the other side of the planet in Saudi Arabia for these fights on Saturday. The card's going to start earlier in the day for us here in the United States at 11 a.m. Central Time. So you're going to get some daytime fights this Saturday. Of course, the main event and the main card will go on a little later than that. You'll probably see it start around 2 o'clock. And then the main event will happen a little closer to dinner time. But in any case, it's going to be on ABC, so it won't be something you have to have ESPN Plus for. And Jose and I are going to bring you our picks for these fights. Just as a reminder to anyone who is new, we make our picks, in a 5-weight system. There are 12 fights currently scheduled for UFC Saudi Arabia this Saturday. Jose and I pick 5 of those 12 fights, pick the winner, and weigh that in order of confidence. How confident are we in that winner? And that's how we make our picks. We're going to go from 5-weight to 1-weight, with 5-weight being the heaviest and therefore most confident pick. We start with our most confident picks, and we slowly, gradually move down to our 1-weights, aka our least confident picks. But in any case, we're picking these 5 fights out of the 12 available options. So even if it's our 1-weight, we're still more confident in taking that fighter to win as opposed to taking somebody else on this card. So without further ado, we're going to start with my 5-weight of Saturday. Not really afternoon, but kind of afternoon, because we're starting with the main event, which will occur in the afternoon. This, like I said earlier, is Robert Whittaker, middleweight, against Ikram Aliskerov, late-minute replacement. And honestly, I don't really need to go on too long about the reasoning for my handicap on this one. And I'm also curious to see what Jose says, so I don't want to rabble on too long. But I'll start with this. Robert Whittaker is a minus 146 favorite against Ikram Aliskerov, who's a plus 114 dog. I personally went into this I'm looking into some of the stats. Like, I have an opinion on who I think is going to win. I look at some of the stats and look at some of the tape, right? And after looking at all that, I was convinced, like, Robert Whittaker is going to be a minus 400, minus 300 favorite, right? And I look and he's minus 146. I'm like, what? Minus 146 is insane value. I give Ikram credit. His finishing ability is top tier. He's got 3 first-round finishes in the UFC, and I give him credit for that. But it's just insane, the step up from Mario Sousa, Phil Hawes, and Warley Alvarez to Robert Whittaker. That is one of the bigger step-ups I've ever seen the UFC give somebody. I mean, Ikram, like I said, he's got a good career. But the thing is he fought in Brave CF before the UFC, and he did one fight for Eagle FC. But it's not like he even has like some sort of like long, tenured, 20-fight professional career before the UFC with like a bigger organization. That would make me think otherwise about his experience levels. So, I also noticed Ikram against Sousa and against Warley Alvarez was like a minus 600 favorite. So what that tells us is, in those lead-ups to those fights, individually, without the future knowledge that he'll win, people were like, yeah, he's going to win. He's a minus 500 favorite, right? He was like a minus 180 favorite against Phil Hawes. So you're telling me he's going to go from being almost a minus 200 or up to a 500 favorite in his previous fights, and then, he's just going to be plus 114 against one of the best middleweights of all time and come in here and get the win? There's just no way. Robert Whittaker has been training for 5 rounds since he signed the contract. Ikram has not. I just don't see Ikram getting a first-round finish. We have not seen Ikram fight in the second round in the UFC. There are way too many question marks, in my opinion. I wanted to go in here and see Ikram as a plus 400, plus 500. Then I'd be like, yeah, Ikram's worth a shot at, right? But plus 114 is crazy. That is just, you are wasting your money, in my opinion. So without further ado, I want to see what you think, Jose, but my 5-weight is Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, Nick, I actually agree with you spot on. Robert Whittaker is actually my 5-weight as well. And you nailed it just right on. Robert Whittaker has been training for five rounds, and even though Ikram was supposed to fight this past weekend, he is in fight shape, but he definitely was not preparing to go toe-to-toe for 5 rounds with one of the best of all time in this division. And Robert Whittaker, like, his striking is just, I do think, is superior than Ikram's. Ikram he has a higher striking percentage, but the thing is, he gets a little sloppy with them. And even in his fight when he knocked out Phil Hawes, he did get clipped a few times, and Phil Hawes was almost like, he was kind of already like rocked from the head kick that Ikram landed on him, and then that's why he was able to punch him, like knock him out with a quick 1-2 combo. Robert Whittaker, I don't think he's just a far superior striker than Phil Hawes, where I don't really see that happening. And Ikram, he is pretty much almost virtually undefeated, except that one loss to Khamzat, losing via KO. So I do think Robert himself has obviously been knocked out and TKO'd himself, and most recently stopped by Dricus du Plessis in the second round. But that being said, I still think he's just overall the better fighter, an extremely experienced fighter. He's only 2 years older than Ikram, and just the experience he has compared to Ikram is not even comparable. Robert Whittaker has been in the UFC since 2012. Again, he's in his early 30s. He still has a lot of time to, like, a lot of good years in front of him, to be honest. And he's been at the top, just losing. He's lost only to Izzy and Dricus du Plessis, who are both going to fight each other later this summer for the belt. So losing to the current and the former champ, I think, is like nothing. That's literally understandable. Like, says a lot more than all the wins that Ikram has. Just the wins alone, it says a lot more. Like the level of competition doesn't even compare. So it would be a nice win for Ikram. I was definitely expecting him to be the underdog, and I actually thought Robert Whittaker would be a bigger favorite, to be honest. He's only being minus 146 right now in FanDuel, but yeah, like you said, I felt like Robert probably should have been like almost a minus like 350 or something, like, just because, again, the level of skills is just not even comparable. So that being said, yeah, I feel really strong about Robert Whittaker getting this finish. He's either gonna stop Ikram, or most likely what I think is probably gonna happen, just be a safe coast to five round unanimous decision victory. So Robert Whittaker is my 5 weight as well.
Sounds good, man. So, yeah, so we do agree then. I mean, man, what more to say? Robert Whittaker seems like the easy pick almost, and I cannot believe that he isn't a bigger favorite. I get that Ikram has, a finishing ability, but no thanks, man. Even if Ikram wants to go the wrestling route, Robert Whittaker was training to fight Khamzat Chimaev. Like, come on. What do you think Khamzat's going to do? It's obvious. He's going to wrestle. So, ain't no way, man. Ain't no way if Dricus, Izzy, Dricus did in the second round, I guess. Izzy, right, can't finish this dude. How the hell is Ikram going to? There's just no way, man. There's just, like, get the hell out of here. And I liked your point about the ages, too. I didn't realize Robert Whittaker is still, like, in his MMA prime in terms of age. Like, just based on how many fights I've seen him in. Kind of assumed he was older. Kind of assumed he was in his upper 30s. Man, he's only got 2 years on Ikram and 2, 3, 4 times as much experience. It's not even close. So, yeah, that being said, man, that's both of our 5 weights of Saturday afternoon. An easy money line MMA lock of the week, 10 total points on Robert Whittaker, and we'll move on to Jose's 4 weight.
Yes, sir. So for my 4 weight, this is actually going to be the main card opener, the light heavyweight bout between Johnny Walker and Volkan Ozdemir. Right now, Johnny Walker, he is the betting. Actually, right now on FanDuel at this moment, they're both locked in at minus 113 each. So people are definitely are just viewing it almost equally both ways. I myself am leaning towards the Johnny Walker side just a little bit more. So he is obviously my 4 weight. And the reason why I'm leaning with Johnny Walker is I just think overall, besides that loss to Magomed Ankalaev, he overall is been looking better and sharper overall just throughout his fights. I think Magomed just in general is just that much better of a fighter. But Volkan Ozdemir, he has fought for the title, but that was a long time ago now against Daniel Cormier. And since then, he's just been on a win-loss. And he's also shares a loss to Magomed, but he actually went to unanimous decision loss against Magomed. So the thing Volkan has that I think that is the only thing that kind of wears me for Johnny Walker is the punching power. Volkan Ozdemir was known just for his stoppages. Out of his 19 wins, 12 of them come via KO/TKO. He himself does not have a chin, though. He has been knocked out twice himself and has been submitted twice as well. So I do think that Johnny Walker could actually, later on in the rounds, like second to third round, be able to actually finish Volkan Ozdemir if Johnny Walker stays composed and does not get knocked out himself. And I like just how they match up, not only stylistically, but just Johnny Walker compared to Volkan Ozdemir. Johnny Walker is just a lot bigger than Volkan Ozdemir, so I think that's going to be troublesome for Volkan. Johnny Walker's 6'6", and Volkan Ozdemir is 6'2", and not only that, But Johnny Walker has a 7-inch reach advantage over Volkan Ozdemir. So because of that, I think he's just going to overall get the better end of the exchanges on the feet. I think he's going to just land more and overall, and then eventually look for his knockout kill. So as long as Johnny Walker doesn't get too wild and start getting loose with his punches, I think he can coast. He can get his way to a stoppage towards the end. Not right away, but definitely towards later in the fight is the way I see it. But Volkan, he is just such a composed striker, though. So if things don't go Johnny Walker's way, I do see Volkan possibly putting Johnny Walker out, because Johnny Walker himself also does not have a chin. Out of his 8 losses, he has been knocked out 5 times. So that's the only thing I do have going for VolkanOzdemir's way, is that he has the power and Johnny Walker does not have a chin, which is obviously a bad combination. But that means I think overall striking wise now, I do think today Johnny Walker is probably the better striker and offers a little more of a threat. I wouldn't even be surprised if Johnny Walker probably was one to initiate a takedown before Volkan in this fight. So right now, yeah, both guys are dead even on the money line, but I'm leaning towards Johnny Walker as this one, where he's my 4-weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
I got Johnny Walker, a little less confident. He is my 2-weight, and mainly because I give a lot of respect to Ozdemir. You mentioned his championship experience, like in the sense that he's fought champions, and he has been kind of on a win-loss cycle as of late. So that kind of bodes bad for him in this fight, which works better even more for my 2-weight Johnny Walker. But in any case, dude, I think Johnny Walker poses a serious power threat for Ozdemir. They both have a lot of KO wins, but Johnny Walker with 16 KO wins, man. That's impressive. I think he has a real chance to knock out Volkan Ozdemir. I'd be surprised if this is anything but a striker's match. And if Volkan wants to go for a takedown, go ahead, man. Not at all concerned about it. And as someone who will likely have a little money on Johnny Walker, and I like the fact that Johnny Walker's just a little wild card too. Like, he'll do spinning elbows and just interesting kicks, all kinds of weird things kind of out of left field that I think a more traditional fighter like Ozdemir might not be ready for, or might throw him a little bit off guard. So we shall see come Saturday, but 2-weight on Johnny Walker.
Yeah, so yeah, this is one. Yeah, we both agree on Johnny Walker at my 4-weight, and he is your 2-weight. So that being said, yeah, I'm down to move on to your 4-weight.
Yes, sir. So for my 4-weight, we're going to go to the co-main event of the afternoon. Heavyweight bout between Sergey Pavlovich and Alexander Volkov. And this is an interesting matchup. You know, I go into this one thinking, well, Pavlovich, you kind of know what you're going to get out of him, right? He's kind of like a discount Derek Lewis almost. He's going to get you the KO, or he might win by decision, but in all reality, he's going to get you the KO or he's going to lose. And it kind of comes down to me for the size here. Alexander Volkov, 6'7", 80-inch reach. I think he's just, and don't get me wrong, Pavlovich a big dude too, 6'3", 84-inch reach, and that's a pretty long reach. But I do think Pavlovich is going to have problems getting to Volkov's chin. Volkov has only been KO'd twice in his MMA career, with the most recent one being by Derek Lewis. I mean, come on, dude. It's Derek Lewis. And even then, it was in 2018. You know, it barely even matters what happened in 2018 at this point. I think Volkov wins this fight with a slow, methodical striking game. He just kind of wins it on the feet. And Pavlovich is going to have to find his spots to swing heavy, and Volkov will avoid taking the huge damage there and kind of piece him up en route to a decision win is my prediction there. So for me, 4-weight on Alexander Volkov by decision. What do you got, Jose?
For mine, I actually have Sergey Pavlovich, and the reason is as you mentioned, yeah, he's you know what to expect on him. It's gonna be a first round kill or be killed type of situation, and he obviously being finished most recently by Tom Maspinall, who's the current interim champ. Besides that, you know, he was riding a phenomenal 6-fight winning streak, beating Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa, and Curtis Blades, all 3 in a row. And Volkov, as you mentioned, has been right now he's actually on a nice 3-fight winning streak himself. And the last time he was finished, as you mentioned, was to Derek Lewis. But these guys, from what I understand too, they used to train together as well, so they both know each other's styles. I think Alexander Volkov is good. He is good enough. I don't think can finish Sergey. I think it'll if Sergey does not finish Alexander Volkov within the round 1 or 2, then I definitely see it going to Volkov. But in this one, just bouncing back from that loss to Tom Aspinall, I think Sergey. A lot of people just see him finish in the first round so much. I do think he has the stamina. He's done it before and can go all the way to 5 rounds. And I think if he doesn't finish Alexander Volkov in the first round, I think we may see just a more better composed striker in Sergey, where okay, now he's gonna know he's gonna probably have to go 2 to 3 rounds. So I think we're just gonna see a high volume, just him landing a high volume amount of punches on Alexander Volkov. But it depends. But that again also depends how well Alexander Volkov knows Sergey, because Alexander Volkov does have the size advantage, which I do like size advantage on these fighters a lot over Sergey, but Sergey has been bigger fighters than him, like Curtis Blades, and has gone toe to toe with other just mammoth guys. Like Derek Lewis is bigger in a different way, but just a thick dude. So that being said, I'm going with Sergey, and if I'm gonna put my money down on him, obviously I think I'm gonna say probably it's gonna be via stoppage, KO/TKO. So this is one we're gonna definitely disagree on.
Yeah, and you're 100% right, man. I'd agree that Sergey's path to victory here is by KO, and it's somewhat likely. I'd be curious to see when the odds come out tomorrow or Wednesday what the odds are exactly. Pavlovich sitting at a -245 favorite, so I am taking the dog here at +186. Yeah, man, it's one of those spots where I'm a little less confident. Like I was saying last week, I think my 3-weight is confident as some weeks 5-weights. But this week is not necessarily the same. Like, I'm very, very, very confident in Robert Whittaker, but I'm a lot less confident for my 5 to 4 weight than I am on some cards from Whittaker to Volkov. But that being said, I still think Volkov outlasts the damage from Pavlovich. And yeah, he just uses his experience as much as Pavlovich may have fought like a few fights at 5-minute, 5 rounds from other promotions, but at least as far as the UFC goes, he's never been outside the first round. And I think at this point, since it's like 6 years later, that we could assume that Pavlovich won't be the same person if it does go 2, 3, 4 rounds. Well, actually, in this case, it can't go 4 rounds. It's not the main event. So it'll go 2 or 3 rounds. I'd just be interested to see if Pavlovich has the conditioning to be able to continue throwing haymakers into the second, third round, because if Volkov has his way, he might be up 2 rounds going into the third, and Pavlovich going to have to dig deep. So we shall see. But in this case, we're actually going to disagree on our 4 weights.
Yeah, and I don't know if I actually said my weight quick, but yeah, I have Sergey. He's my 2-weight though. I don't know if I said that earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, but he is my 2-weight, so I'm not that confident in him yet, because then again the reason is if he does not finish Volkov, yeah, how is he going to look beyond the second round? And Volkov has that size advantage. And Volkov also is a phenomenal striker. So if Sergey doesn't finish him, I do see Volkov possibly just beating him via decision then afterwards, depending on how that goes. But again, I have Sergey as my 2-weight, and I'm seeing him. His path to victory is a KO/TKO stoppage.
So that being said, then we've covered our 5, 4 weights, and then individually our 2 weights. So let's move on then to covering Jose's 3-weight.
Yes, and my 3-weight, this is the welterweight bout between Kelvin Gastelum and Daniel Rodriguez. Right now, Kelvin Gastelum, he is a strong favorite at -250, while Daniel Rodriguez is the +190 underdog. For this one, I'm going with Kelvin Gastelum. I think he still looks good, even though he has been on himself in a win-loss and mostly loss streak since 2019, since that Israel Adesanya title fight. He's lost to some dudes that I felt like he definitely should have beat, like Darren Till and Jack Hermanson. And then, he goes on to lose to Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier, and Sean Brady, all killers. Beats Chris Curtis. That Chris Curtis fight, he looked really good. Chris Curtis himself, too. I think himself, he's just been looking good, too. He does have that split decision loss to Brandon Allen. But before that, he also had a split decision win over Marc-Andre Barriault. So he has bounced back, and he also had a win before the Kevin Gastelum loss, a win over Joaquin Buckley. So Kevin Gastelum is still in there, hanging with some of the younger dudes. He's only 32 years old as well, is 18-9. But I just think the level of competition he's faced is just brutal. While Daniel Rodriguez, he himself has faced tough competition, but I don't think nearly as tough as Kelvin Gastelum. And the fact is too, this is a welterweight bout, so I think Kelvin Gastelum is better as a welterweight. So that means I think in this fight he's going to be he's just going to overall look better and more in his prime. Daniel Rodriguez, he's actually already 37 years old as well, so he's kind of up in the older side. Not like anything like bad or against him for that, um, but sorry. So just being a little older and stuff too. I'm leaning with the more youthful and slightly more experienced Kelvin Gastelum. Uh, and how they match up stylistically wise, Daniel Rodriguez stylistically is Daniel Rodriguez is physically I should say is the taller guy, and he has a 2.5 reach advantage over Calvin Gastelum. So, and then when it comes to significant strikes, Daniel Rodriguez does throw a high volume of punches. And Kevin Gastelum, for himself too, he does throw a high amount as well. He lands 3.55 significant strikes per minute. Well, Daniel Rodriguez, his ratio is 7.3. But when it comes to the absorption rate, Daniel Rodriguez absorbs a lot more than Calvin Gastelum, and I think that's going to be probably the tail of the story. Is Calvin Gastelum is going to piece up Daniel Rodriguez on the feet more, and then when it comes down to it, I think Calvin Gastelum is going to take Daniel Rodriguez down and just ground and pound him. I don't know if he'll finish Daniel Rodriguez. I think D-Rod's most likely to lose by decision, and I think so. That being said, I think Calvin Gastelum's mostly going to take him to a unanimous decision victory, probably similar to how he did with Chris Curtis. I think it's just going to be just more domination from Kelvin Gastelum's side than anything. So that being said, I do have Kelvin Gastelum as my 3-weight. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Sounds like, excuse me, sounds like another agreement for us. I do agree with Kelvin Gastelum. And here's my 1-weight, so decently less confident. This one was tough for me. When I look at the odds, I can't help but what's the right word? I can't help but agree or just like see that there is value on Daniel Rodriguez at plus 190. I feel like Kelvin Gastelum being minus 250 is pretty heavy, but I do think he should win this fight, right? If I'm just picking our weights and who I think is going to win the fight, to me this should be Kelvin Gastelum. He, in my opinion, is the better striker. I understand he puts out less volume than Daniel Rodriguez, but he also absorbs less volume, somewhat significantly than Daniel Rodriguez. I love Kelvin Gastelum's history, some of the dogs he's fought against, and so has Daniel Rodriguez. He got to fight Mike Perry in his UFC tenure, and a couple of other decent fighters, Kevin Lee, who's no longer really fighting, and Li Jinliang, who isn't bad. But Daniel Rodriguez struggled against Magny and Machado Gary, seemingly, mainly Machado Gary, with the striking and somewhat of the advantage standing up. Although I will admit, Ian Gary's a bit bigger than Gastelum, since Ian Gary's sitting at 6'3", Gastelum's sitting at 5'9". So the size difference is going to be interesting for me here. But in the end, I do think Kelvin Gastelum's still the better striker, and I agree with you that he pieces up Daniel Rodriguez enough to win this fight. So yeah, that will do it for Jose's 3-weight, my 1-weight, and that gives us a total of 1 fight remaining. This will be my 3-weight, and whatever Jose's got for his 1-weight are the only fights remaining. And for this one, I'm going to take a non-main event fighter. Again, this is my 3-weight, third most confident pick of Saturday afternoon, and I'm going to go with Shara Magomedov fighting Joyalton Luderbach. This is what so far looks to be the it's either going to be early, like opening the main card, or it's going to be finishing the prelim card, as in the main event of the prelims. And it's kind of a fight between two prospect style fighters. Shara is the kind of guy who just looks crazy. Like I don't know how else to say it. He looks crazy. He's got like a lazy eye or something. He does not look like a person that you want to be on his bad side. Let me just say that. You look at him and you immediately know, don't mess with this guy. And he was able to beat Bruno Silva up by unanimous decision. It was a close fight. I mean, maybe it should have been split. Okay, whatever. Going into that fight, he's a minus 300 favorite. He gets the job done. This is Joyalton Luderbach's UFC debut. And I'm not knocking the dude, although he was 0-1 in KSW, 0-2 in PFL, And then he was able to get a win in the ACB. I'm not too knowledgeable on that promotion, but in any case, he kind of struggled in a lot of his pre-UFC tenure fights. It was Brave CF. That's what it was. Braves cage fighting. So, what I'm trying to say though, my point is that I don't feel Joelton Luderbach got some sort of really good extensive prior experience, say to like Alex Pereira, right? Kickboxing experience, champion in kickboxing, now in MMA. Like Joelton doesn't really have that kind of aspect to him. I think he's going to get stung by Shara, who's been able to stand with the likes of Bruno Silva, who's not a stud by necessarily means, but Shara put up over 100 significant strikes and absorbed less than 70. I mean, that's pretty impressive if you ask me, against a guy like Bruno Silva, who, like I said, may not be amazing, but he's got a good amount of UFC experience at this point and has some wins under his belt. So, to me, this is some pretty simple money. Shara Magomedov is going to get the job done, and I'm just double checking, but he is a decent favorite. Yes, sir, he is a minus 245 favorite. So, pick on him, maybe put him in a parlay or something, because 245 to win 100 is a little steep, but he will win on Saturday. What do you think, Jose?
Yeah, for this one, Nick, I agree with you. I have Shara Magomedov as well. But he's my one weight, and the reason is the one thing this really stuck out to me was just Jolton's his experience, just being 38-9 at the age of 31 to me is insane. And he's gone against, like, he's fought and lost a split decision to Clay Collard back in 2021, and he fought Dricus Du Plessis, got TKO'd by him in 2019. But that was at that was a middleweight bout too. So he's fought like dudes and won and lost against dudes of welterweight, middleweight, and I wouldn't even be surprised if even lighter. He has such a long MMA resume that, to me, that's the one thing I see like that he has over Shara. Shara being 12-0 is really good and impressive, and he's fought, like, just beating Bruno Silva looked good in that unanimous decision victory. But he did show some flaws, like he cannot wrestle. Like, his wrestling is not as good. He's definitely a far superior striker. So if this fight does stay on the feet, though, if it goes to the ground, I want to see how Shara is going to look getting back up, and see how Jones going to put his 38 wins experience to the table, how he's going to benefit and use that experience, because that is just an insane amount of experience. And, like, obviously you can't go through and look at all the fighters he's fought and look who's legit and who's not, but I have seen some legit names right here. Not as many, just obviously the current champ, Dricus Du Plessis, the biggest one that sticks out, but even then, that's a loss. So until then, like, this I will really show Jones true, like, where he's at, like 38-9, how good he really is now that he's in the UFC. Again, it's going to be his UFC debut, so we won't know, but I am leaning towards Shara, just because thus far, I mean, Jolin, even though he has 38 wins, he also has 9 losses, and thus far Shara has yet to lose. So that being said, I'm going with Shara as my one weight.
All right, makes sense, man. Yeah, that is definitely a lot of experience to have. I personally question whether the experience is relevant enough. I do understand he has some former UFC fighter opponents in his tenure, in his history book, which is good for sure. But I'm still not really that impressed, because he got finished and he couldn't beat Clay Collard. It was a split decision loss. And Luderbach was over weight limit in that fight by 4 pounds. So he couldn't even beat Clay Collard with 4 extra pounds. I don't like Joelton Luderbach that much, at least now. If he can win this fight and change my opinion, all props to him. But I think Shara wins this pretty handedly. So, hell yeah. That will do it then. Those are our 5 weights for UFC Saudi Arabia. Again, those are going to be some daytime fights, so make sure to get your bets in ahead of time, maybe on Friday night or Saturday morning, or whenever you get some good lines, because some of these lines are going to move. I would definitely move on some of the underdog lines we were looking at quick. And honestly, bet on Whittaker sooner rather than later because that's crazy to me that he isn't a bigger favorite. So, that being said, thanks for listening. We will, of course, be back. I believe a week from Saturday, we have our next pay-per-view event at the end of the month, and that's obviously been shifted up quite significantly with Conor McGregor having dropped out. We're now going to see the light heavyweight belt being put on the line, two guys stepping in last minute, and we're going to see Pereira versus Prochaska duke it out, which would I consider to actually be a better card than what we were going to see anyway. So make sure to tune in, stick around, subscribe, and put some alerts on for around 5:30 next Monday, and we will be live giving you our picks. Thanks for listening, and have a good week.